Hi, I'm Dan Reinecke with Unknown Media. Today, I'm going to show you how to achieve a soft vintage look in your photos. Let's take a look.
Alright, so let's jump right into this. I will show you how to achieve a soft vintage look in a photo. So first things first, let's make it soft. What you're going to want to do is duplicate that background. You're going to come up here to Layer and duplicate that layer. Okay, so now you have your background copy, and now what we're going to do with this is apply a Gaussian blur. Now, really this is going to be up to you how blurred out I guess you want the image to be. I'm going to do this at a 25 just so you can really see the effect. I'm going to click OK. Now, this is obviously not what you want because it's obviously all completely blurred. So what we're going to do is go into the blending options and we're going to select soft light. Now look at that. It's still a sharp image, but at the same time it almost gives this dreamy glow to it. I will show you it on and off. That is the original image, and this is with that blur effect put on it. Everything kind of gets somewhat of a glow to it. Now, there's a very large variety of different ways on how to achieve kind of a vintage look in a photo. A lot of people think you may have to add a lot of grain and things like that, but I think more than anything what sells a vintage photo is going to be the color. So now what I'm going to do is going to jump up here and I'm going to select the color balance tool. Now this gives me a lot of different options to affect the shadows, midtones, and highlights. One thing that I always like to do to kind of give things a little bit more of a vintagey look, go ahead and select my shadows. And I'm just going to add some blues. Add some blues to the shadows. And then go into the highlights and add some yellows to the highlights. And notice this kind of gives it a dreamy, vintagey feel. Now another thing that you can do, which I never mind doing with vintage photo effects, go ahead and select your curves. Now what you're going to do, this is going to be the shadows down here, and up here is of course going to be the highlights. I'm just going to go ahead and flatten the image out a bit. Now what that's going to do is basically make my shadows brighter and my highlights a bit darker, and it's just going to flatten it out a bit. And now again, this is going to be all according to taste, as you can see, but I feel reducing the contrast isn't a bad thing. Another thing you can do, I suppose, is simply select your brightness and contrast tool and just decrease the contrast. But as you can see, it doesn't necessarily give the greatest control. So go ahead and get rid of that and bring my curves layer back in there. Now, another thing that I find kind of neat and that I will share with you, go ahead and create a new layer. Select OK. Now you're going to actually want to have this below your curves, so it also will be affected by that flattening effect that you put on. So you have your blank layer here. Now we're going to go over here and we have the gradient tool selected. Now this is easy to get carried away, so just kind of be careful, but you're going to have your white selected. I guess technically you can use any color you want. I'm choosing to use a white. But now the gradient itself will be foreground transparent. And I'll show you what the effect can do. Simply you're just going to grab here and usually do it from a side where, say, like a sunlight is coming through the windows, which basically is what I'm going to be doing right now. So you select this, take your gradient tool, and just simply drag it in the image. Now what this is going to kind of do is just really kind of overemphasize that light coming in the window, and it's kind of just going to dirty up the frame a bit. And again, this is all going to be to your preference on how you want to achieve this. But as you can see, it just gives somewhat of almost of an angelic look. It's that light coming through the window. And even here you can go ahead and reduce the opacity of that if you think it's too much. And even Now I'm thinking maybe I flattened it out a bit too much, so go ahead and bring the opacity down on that and bring back in some of that contrast.
And that's how you achieve a soft vintage look in your photos. I'm Dan Reinecke. Take your best shot.